Hello, Tiffany Boyd with Free Your Children here. If you are just now joining us, thank you for tuning in. We are working out the kinks here, trying to make sure that we're streaming across all of our platforms. I have had a ton of phone calls today, text messages, private messages, asking me about a post that I made over on the Free Your Children Facebook page. This particular post dealt with SB Senate Bill 0122. As most of you probably know by now, our General Assembly convened and started and kicked off our legislative session for 2025. And of course, we were out the gate running with bad legislation, which is exactly what we expected. And one of those pieces of legislation happened to be SB 0122. So I think that there were some misunderstandings about the bill. So the first thing that I wanted to do was kind of review that with everyone so that they would better understand what we were discussing, because again, I had a ton of questions. Now, the first thing that I want to highlight is that this is not voucher legislation. Okay, this doesn't deal with the voucher bill or the Education Freedom Scholarship Act. This is another bill that was filed, and this particular bill, if you read the caption, and you may or may not know exactly what I'm talking about, but the caption reads, "Schools Home as introduced eliminates various requirements for parents conducting a homeschool if the parent provides a named curriculum to their child at home, allows the state to impose additional requirements and standards on a homeschool parent or student if the homeschool parent or student voluntarily elects to participate in a state program or applies for and receives state funds." Okay, so what this particular piece of legislation does, I'm going to give you an example. If your child plays sports for the school, that would be a state funded program. And so it would open the door to all of this government overreach. Now, do I think that this particular piece of legislation was written because if they pass school choice in Tennessee, if it passes, will this lead over into more government overreach? Absolutely. What you need to understand with this is that this piece of legislation is being carried by a Republican. Again, that's low. And so these are the same individuals that are promoting and peddling this whole idea of vouchers in the state of Tennessee. So if they think this piece of legislation and this overreach is a good thing, you need to stop and ask yourselves, what is school choice going to look like, and what types of overreach and government strings are going to be attached to that? Because that is exactly the goal. That's the end goal of school choice in general. But for all intents and purposes, I want to highlight this particular piece of legislation because this is what the post was about. So I'm going to pull up the bill. I'm looking down at my phone so that I can read this to you. What I did over on the Free Your Children Facebook page was I highlighted specific portions of the bill that really stuck out to me. And one of those was down at the bottom where it says, "This subdivision B3 does not prohibit this state or an agency of this state from regulating, overseeing, or otherwise imposing requirements on a parent, teacher, or homeschool student if the parent, teacher, or homeschool student voluntarily elects to participate in a state program that imposes certain requirements or standards on participants that exceed those established in the section, or who has otherwise applied for and received state funds for which this state or an agency of this state has promulgated rules or established requirements or standards for recipients that exceed those established in this section." So they're already telling you with this piece of legislation that you are giving your permission as a parent, if your homeschool child chooses to participate in these programs that are state funded, that you are giving and you agree to this overreach from the state, additional regulation, additional oversight, or otherwise imposing requirements. Okay, so that's one thing that I wanted everyone to be aware of is this particular piece of legislation, SB0122. It is not the voucher legislation. It doesn't have anything to do with the Education Freedom Scholarship Act, and that's a totally different bill. This is a separate bill. So what I would do is I would encourage everyone in the state of Tennessee to reach out to their legislators and obviously tell them to vote no on this legislation. It isn't, homeschoolers are not who they should be worried about imposing all of this overreach on. Okay. And for those of you who say that the government has messed up traditional public education, well, this is the same government that would then be imposing all of these regulations and restrictions on the private homeschool community. So you need to be aware of that. Again, I would definitely, if you are homeschooling your children, it doesn't matter if you're utilizing these programs or not. This is a clear example of what we have been warning about with our Tennessee state legislature, is that if a Republican legislator thought it was a good idea to introduce a bill like this, I would definitely be asking them and wanting to know why they thought it was a good idea to even bring this up and to even file a bill that would provide this oversight, or actually tighten the screws on homeschool families. Why would they think this is a good idea? Conservatives are supposed to be opposed to big government. They are supposed to believe in limited government. They claim that they believe that parents have the right to educate their children as they see fit. But yet, when we get a piece of legislation like this, it really brings home the fact that the ultimate goal of many of these programs or initiatives is to do nothing more than to come with strings to strip away the freedoms and the constitutional rights of homeschool families. So if you are a homeschool family, you need to know and understand what this type of legislation seeks to do. I would definitely reach out to my legislator and let them know that you do not agree with this and to vote no on SB 122. But again, I wanted to clarify, this isn't part of the Education Freedom Scholarship Act. This is a totally, separate piece of legislation. And, you can read it. I have listed over on For Your Children a link to the actual bill where you can read it. What I would encourage you to do is navigate yourself over to the Tennessee General Assembly website, create an account there where you can go ahead and save the bills that you are watching, so you can get notifications on those and you can keep up to date about what is going on. And it talks about, the title of the bill says an act to amend Tennessee Code Annotated Title 49 relative to homeschool. So that's right at the top of the bill. And then it says Section 1, and it gives the Tennessee Code Annotated number is amended by deleting subsection B and substituting instead the following. Except for homeschools operated under subdivision A2 or A3, a parent teacher conducting a homeschool must provide notice to the local director of schools prior to each school year of the parent teacher's intent to conduct a homeschool, and for purposes of reporting only, submit to the director of schools the names, number, ages, and grade levels of the children to be homeschooled. And B is a big one, a normed curriculum to the parent teacher's homeschool students that has been selected and approved by the parent teacher. The state and agency of the state, the local school district, or local government shall not require a parent teacher of a homeschool student to, and then it lists, administer an assessment, including but not limited to a state mandated standardized test or assessment, submit any information or documentation regarding the education being provided by the parent teacher. So it lists all of these things, but then it says, it goes into what I read you just a minute ago, which is it does not prohibit this state or an agency of the state from regulating, overseeing, or otherwise imposing requirements. So this is a great example. I think it's a good thing. If you want to look at the bright side of this, I think this is a good way to drive home the point to the homeschool community that if you are utilizing state funded programs, they are going to come with major overreach and major strings. And this is just a glaring example of that. So, again, this particular live stream is not about the school choice bill, the Education Freedom Scholarship Bill. This one is about SB0122. Ask your legislators or tell your legislators to vote no on this piece of legislation. It is not a good piece of legislation for the homeschool community whatsoever. You need to be aware of this. You need to be watching it, for your children will be watching it. But I did want to jump on here and clarify that, because I've had a whole lot of questions about that. And I want to remind you that if you as a homeschooler are wondering what strings of school choice look like, this is a good example of that. Because again, this piece of legislation is sponsored by a Republican. And if they believe that this is a good piece of legislation with, all of the oversight and the regulations and the strings attached to any state funded programs, imagine what that would look like in the version of school choice. I know that there has been a false narrative that is being peddled around by, I believe, AFP, Americans for Prosperity, is one of the entities that has peddled this fake narrative that homeschoolers were upset that they were left out of the governor's Education Freedom Scholarship Act. That is not true. If you paid any attention to what happened last legislative session, you will know that homeschoolers packed the House and the Senate in opposition to the voucher bill, school choice, because we do not now, do not ever want to be included in school choice legislation, because we know that it would be and mean the destruction of true private education. We would no longer be allowed to homeschool the way we see fit. We would be mandated to homeschool the way the government tells us that we have to. So we are still opposed to the Education Freedom Scholarship Act, to school choice in any form, no matter if it's a tax credit, an ESA, a voucher, or any other scam by any other name. We are still very much opposed to that, and we will be at the Capitol in opposition to the governor's Education Freedom Scholarship Act. I am connected to homeschoolers all across the nation who fight every piece of school choice legislation that comes down the pike, because they know that school choice is a scam and they know it's dangerous to true private education. So whatever narrative that is being peddled, that the homeschoolers were upset that they were left out of this, there's no merit to that whatsoever. We showed them last legislative session how we felt about school choice. That hasn't changed. We still believe that public dollars should not fund private education in any way, shape, or form. We know that what the government funds, it runs, and with those monies come strings attached to it. And that's just a few of the many reasons why we are opposed to school choice. But if you are being fed that narrative, please be aware that it is not true. I have homeschoolers contact me constantly. I have homeschoolers not only in Tennessee, but across the United States that contact me. I have worked closely with homeschool organizations in other states who consistently fight against school choice overreach within the homeschool and private school community. So that is a false narrative being peddled by those who have an agenda, which is they want the school choice legislation to pass. Again, we will be at the legislative in the committee meetings at the legislature this legislative session. We're just waiting for dates and times that, we're asked to be there. We will also continue to watch SB0122, this particular piece of legislation that was introduced by Lowe. And ask your legislators, tell your legislators to vote no on SB0122 as well. So that's what we have going on so far. I am certain I will be doing more live streams as we move through the week, as we move through the session, as it begins to ramp up. We are still waiting for some information. I received multiple phone calls today about the impending special session that multiple people believe that, Governor Lee is going to call. I will keep you apprised of that as things unfold. We are still waiting to announce our bill number for the FREE Act. So I want to encourage you to start having conversations with your legislators if they claim to be constitutionalist, if they claim to be conservative, if they claim to believe that parents have the right to educate their children as they see fit and that they are best. They are the ones that know their children best and that they should have the authority to make decisions for their child's education. Then every single one of those legislators, representatives that are making those claims should be in favor of the FREE Act, the bill that Free Your Children and our team has written, which will be filed soon, and we will be sharing more information about that as we move forward. Again, if you would like to help us, check out the Free Your Children website, freeyourchildren.com. There are links there. If you're interested in a seminar, we will be happy to bring a seminar to your area. Again, we are dependent on your support and we need your help. So if you feel led to do that, we would appreciate that greatly as well. I want to say, thank you for all your calls, all of your questions today regarding this particular piece of legislation. I'm glad to see that it was in the algorithm and that many of you saw the post that I made. And I want to encourage you to keep a close eye on everything that's going on this legislative session. Do your research. Read the bills, do your research, sign up for an account on the Tennessee General Assembly, track the bills that interest you the most. But most importantly, don't allow other people to lead the narrative here. Make sure that you're informed. If you have questions, reach out. I will answer them to the best of my ability, and so will the Free Your Children team. Thank you for watching. And again, you can send me an email, freeyourchildren@gmail.com. You can check out the website. And of course, you can find us on all of the different streams. But I did want to jump on and give you a quick update about this particular bill. And I hope that answers your questions. Thanks so much and have a great night.